Shanghai, 1930s, the most dangerous city on earth, not by reputation, by count. The Shanghai Municipal Police, the multinational force policing the international settlement, recorded more violent deaths per year than any comparable city in the world. Triads, warlords, kidnapping syndicates, political assassinations carried out in broad daylight on the Bund. Two British officers, named William Ewart Fairbairn and Eric Anthony Sykes, worked those streets for decades. Fairbairn joined the Shanghai Municipal Police in 1907 as a beat constable. By the time he left in 1940, he had been in approximately 600 street fights. He had been knifed. He had been shot. He had broken bones in his hands so many times that they had reset into something resembling a natural weapon. He held black belts in judo and jiu-jitsu. He had studied every martial system available in the Far East. He had developed, with Sykes, a close-quarters combat system so methodically lethal that the British Army would eventually decide that teaching it to their soldiers was more important than almost anything else they could teach them. And in 1940, at the ages of 55 and 57 respectively, the two old Shanghai policemen came home to England, volunteered their services to the military, and sat down at the Wilkinson Sword factory to design a knife. What they produced in that meeting, a 7-inch double-edged blade, needle-pointed, with a foil grip that aligned naturally in the hand for a thrusting strike, is still carried by British Special Forces today, not ceremonially, operationally. In December 19, a Special Boat Service Commando in Afghanistan used one during an ambush by enemy fighters. The knife Fairbairn and Sykes designed in 1940 for killing German sentries is still killing people in the 21st century. The story of how a policeman's tool became the most enduring close combat weapon in the history of special operations begins, as it must, in a Shanghai alley. William Ewart Fairbairn was born in Rickmansworth in 1885. He served briefly with the Royal Marines before joining the Shanghai Municipal Police in 1907. Shanghai in the early 20th century was a genuinely extraordinary place, a city governed by no single authority, divided between Chinese jurisdiction, the French concession, and the international settlement, administered by a multinational council. The police force that patrolled the international settlement was accordingly multinational, drawing officers from Britain, America, and several other allied nations, and operating in conditions that no conventional police training had prepared them for. Fairbairn began studying combative arts almost immediately. He trained in judo under Sadakazu Uyenishi, one of the foremost instructors in the world, eventually earning a black belt. He studied Chinese fighting systems. He studied Western boxing. He studied knife fighting techniques from Filipino and Chinese practitioners. He was not collecting martial arts as a hobby. He was assembling a system that could keep him alive in conditions where conventional policing techniques were demonstrably inadequate. By the 1920s, he was the SMP's chief instructor in physical training and close-quarters combat. He redesigned the force's weapons training, its baton techniques, its restraint methods. He developed what he called Defendu, a fighting system stripped of all ceremony and elegance, built entirely around the fastest possible path, from threat recognition to the threat's elimination. There was no sporting element. There were no rules. Fairbairn's system assumed the opponent was trying to kill you and taught you to kill them first. Eric Sykes arrived in Shanghai later, a former British Army officer who had served in the Boer War and eventually joined the SMP's sniper and firearms training unit. The two men shared a philosophy that close-quarters combat was a technical problem to be solved with maximum efficiency, and that sentiment had no place in the solution. Together, they developed firearms training programs that would directly influence modern police and military shooting doctrine. Their knife work grew from the same philosophy. The knives issued to SMP officers were inadequate. They custom-built replacements from British bayonet blades, about 24 Shanghai fighting knives, as they came to be called, made for their own use and that of selected officers. The blade was designed around one principle. The human body has specific points of vulnerability: the subclavian artery, the brachial artery, the femoral artery, the carotid. A knife that could reach those points quickly and reliably, through clothing, in darkness, with a minimum of movement and noise, was the knife Fairbairn-Sykes wanted. Everything else, cutting ability, prying, utility, was irrelevant. This was not a tool. It was an instrument designed for one purpose. The meeting at Wilkinson Sword in November 1940 brought these two old men and their decades of lethal expertise into contact with one of the finest knife-making operations in Britain. John Wilkinson Latham, the managing director, and Charlie Rose, head of the experimental department, listened to what Fairbairn-Sykes wanted and understood immediately that what they were being asked to build was not a conventional military knife. The first batch of 50 knives was produced in January 1941. A full order of 1,500 followed immediately. The blade was 7 inches, double-edged, acutely tapered to a needle point. The taper was not decorative. A blade that tapers to a very fine point penetrates clothing, leather, and flesh with minimal resistance. The double edge allowed cutting strokes in both directions. The crossguard was S-shaped, protecting the hand during a thrust, while allowing the blade to be drawn cleanly from a sheath without snagging. The grip was a foil grip, a thin, elongated handle that positioned the hand in natural alignment with the blade for a thrusting strike. The same grip a fencer uses when committing to a lunge. You did not hold the Fairbairn-Sykes the way you held a hunting knife. You held it the way you held a sword, because the techniques Fairbairn-Sykes had developed were derived from fencing and from the Filipino martial arts, not from conventional knife fighting. By the second pattern in 1941, the blade had been refined to just under 7 inches, the crossguard made oval rather than S-shaped, and the grip given a knurled surface for better retention in a wet hand. 38,000 second pattern knives were ordered. The third pattern in October 1943 introduced a ringed grip. By this point, several manufacturers beyond Wilkinson were producing variants. No formal military specification existed until 1949, 4 years after the war ended. The knife had been produced in its hundreds of thousands before anyone wrote down what it was supposed to be. That absence of a formal specification was not bureaucratic negligence. It was a reflection of how the knife entered service, through the personal authority of two men whose reputation was sufficient that the military accepted what they designed, without requiring paperwork to justify it. Fairbairn-Sykes did not submit a proposal. They came to Wilkinson Sword and told them what they needed. The knife that resulted was an expression of their combined experience, rather than a response to a committee's requirements. That is why it worked. Now, before we get into what it did in the field, if you are following this, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps the channel grow. The Fairbairn-Sykes was issued to British Commandos, the Special Air Service, the Special Operations Executive, the Airborne Forces, and the Long-Range Desert Group. American forces received them as well. The Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner of the Central Intelligence Agency, issued them to operatives working behind enemy lines in occupied Europe. The Marine Raiders based their issued knife directly on the Fairbairn-Sykes design. The knife appeared on the insignia of the British Commandos, the Belgian Commandos, the Dutch Commando Corps, and the United States Army Rangers. A solid gold Fairbairn-Sykes is part of the Commandos Memorial at Westminster Abbey. The relationship between the knife and the men who carried it was not merely operational, it was identity. When you were issued a Fairbairn-Sykes, you were being told something about what you were expected to do, and how you were expected to do it. The knife that Fairbairn carried in Shanghai, that had been designed for silent kills in alleys patrolled by criminal syndicates, was now being handed to 20-year-old paratroopers and SOE agents, and commandos, who would use it for exactly the same purpose in the occupied farmhouses and coastal installations of France, Norway, and the Channel Islands. Fairbairn himself described the knife's purpose without ambiguity. "In close-quarters fighting, there is no more deadly weapon than the knife," he wrote in his training manual Get Tough, published in 1942. The manual was not a philosophical document, it was a technical guide to killing people efficiently. Fairbairn had spent 30 years in Shanghai learning this material firsthand. He was 55 years old when he wrote it, and he was not exaggerating a single word. The technique Fairbairn and Sykes taught was built around the anatomical reality of the human body. The subclavian artery, running beneath the clavicle, could be reached with a downward thrust behind the collarbone. A man struck there would be incapacitated within seconds and dead within minutes, from blood loss that no field medicine available in 1943 could prevent. The brachial artery in the upper arm, the femoral in the inner thigh, the carotid in the neck. Each represented a point where a single accurate thrust ended a threat permanently and silently. Silently was the operative word. The Fairbairn-Sykes was not a weapon you used when your options included a firearm. It was the weapon you used when a firearm was not an option, when a sentry had to die without alerting the patrol 20 yards away, when an SOE operative needed to clear a room before a radio transmission, when a commando team was inside a wire perimeter where a single shot would collapse the entire operation. The knife that worked in a Shanghai alley at midnight worked in a Norman farmyard for exactly the same reasons: silence, speed, precision. Three qualities that no gun, not even the Delisle carbine with its 85 decibel report, could fully replicate. The partnership that produced the knife did not survive the war intact. Early in 1942, Sykes discovered that Fairbairn was planning to participate in an actual commando operation, not as a trainer, but as an operative. Sykes reported him to their superiors. A man who knew the full details of SOE and commando training programs, who had personally trained hundreds of agents, could not be allowed to fall into German hands. Fairbairn was grounded. He never forgave Sykes. The two men who had worked together in Shanghai for decades, who had built a fighting system and a knife together, stopped speaking. Sykes retired in April 1945 with the rank of major. He died a month later of heart problems. Fairbairn continued training OSS operatives, police forces in Cyprus and Singapore after the war, anyone who needed what he knew. He died in 1960 at the age of 75. The knife that the two of them designed in a single meeting at Wilkinson Sword in November 1940 outlasted both of them and has never stopped being used. In 2019, in a country that did not exist when Fairbairn joined the Shanghai Municipal Police, an operator used one to survive an ambush. The knife was 79 years old. It worked exactly as designed. In close quarters fighting, there is no more deadly weapon. Fairbairn said so in 1942. The record since then has not contradicted him.